Quebec City, winter night, January 22, 2020. Room 166, Hôtel Château Laurier, in the Sainte-Foy district. The door is slightly ajar, red neon from the hallway spilling inside. On the floor, 22-year-old Marylène Levesque lies face down in a pool of blood, still warm. Her body is nearly destroyed, at least 13 stab wounds, some piercing her heart, others severing her airway. The knife is still lodged in her neck. 3 hours later, a 51-year-old man walks into the Quebec police station, dried blood on his hands, speaking in a flat, emotionless voice. "I just killed a girl at the hotel. I'll show you where." His name Eustachio Gallese, and the detail that left all of Canada in shock just 10 months earlier. He had still been serving a life sentence for beating and stabbing his former wife to death in 2004. He had been released on parole, and even granted permission to meet his sexual needs with women as long as he reported it. Marylène, born in Saguenay-Chicoutimi in 1997, grew up with her single mother, Marylène Levesque, and spent years in foster care after her parents separated. Everyone remembered her bright smile, the way she called people best friend, even when she'd just met them. She moved to Quebec City to start over working at a massage parlor to support her dreams. And then she crossed paths with the monster the Canadian justice system itself had let loose. This wasn't just a murder. This was the case that forced an entire country to stare into the mirror and ask, how did we let a 22-year-old girl die because of a single disastrous parole decision? Turn the lights on, because this story is darker than a January night in Quebec. 2014, Marylène Levesque had just turned 17. The quiet girl from Saguenay-Chicoutimi packed a few changes of clothes into a backpack, kissed her mother goodbye, and boarded a bus out of her hometown. Her destination, Quebec City, more than 200 kilometers away, where the city lights burned brighter and promises sounded sweeter. She would go, then come back, then leave again. 2, sometimes 3 trips a week. No driver's license, no car, just bus tickets and occasional blah-blah car rides. She laughed with her friends, saying, "One day, I'll have my own place there. I'll study architecture. I'll design the whole world." By early 2020, she thought she had finally found solid ground. She moved in with her new boyfriend, Gabriel Truchen, into a small apartment in Chicoutimi. Gabriel later recalled how Marylène began talking constantly about the future. Every night she opened her laptop to browse architecture schools, carefully writing down scholarship options. She even taped sticky notes on the wall. 2021, apply to UQAM. January 22 to 2020, a Wednesday. Like every week, Marylène took the bus to Quebec City for work. Gabriel stayed behind and texted her, "Come home early tonight, I'll make poutine." 9:00 p.m. Her last message showed seen. No reply. 9:30 p.m. Gabriel called, ringing unanswered. 10:00 p.m. Panic set in. He started messaging her co-workers, his heart racing. Then his phone rang. An unknown number. Gabriel answered. A man's voice, low and cold. "Hello, this is the Quebec police. Are you Gabriel Truchen? I'm very sorry to inform you that Marylène Levesque is dead. She has been murdered." In a single night, all the sticky notes about the future, all the dreams of architecture, all those bus rides home, everything stopped forever. And the man who destroyed her life, a man who should never have been allowed back into society, was sitting just a few kilometers away in an interrogation room, calmly scraping blood from under his fingernails. The autopsy later revealed a number that silenced the courtroom. Marylène had not been stabbed 13 times as first reported. She had been stabbed more than 50 times from chest to abdomen, from neck to back. Almost no part of her body was left untouched. This was not a brief moment of lost control. It was sustained, deliberate fury. To understand how a 22-year-old could die this way, we have to turn the clock back. 17 years. 2003, a small hotel in Quebec. Chantal Deschênes, 32, a beautiful bartender and single mother of 2 little girls ages 10 and 6. Eustachio Gallese, 36, the dining room manager, polite and composed, in front of guests, but very different behind closed doors. They met on night shifts under dim lights and shared secret drinks. The romance ignited fast, intense, reckless, and dangerous. At the same time, Eustachio was still legally married to Joanne Lefrançois. They had wed in 1996 and shared 3 children. Their marriage had never been peaceful. During arguments, he punched holes in walls. Once, while driving through Ottawa, he flew into a rage and slapped his wife so violently she was hospitalized. Police arrested him. He spent exactly 7 days in jail, then went back home, as if nothing had happened. Joanne would later insist, "I was never afraid of him," but Chantal Deschênes was afraid. And in 2004, she paid for it with her life, killed with the same hammer and the same knife. Joanne always remembered Eustachio as a good father, at least on paper. He was rarely home because of his brutal 12-14-hour shifts, but when he was around, he took the kids out for ice cream, sat with them to watch hockey, played the role. Then Chantal Deschênes entered the picture. Just a few months later, Eustachio walked out on his wife and 3 children, leaving them behind in a house scarred with holes punched through the walls, and moved in with Chantal. They married at lightning speed. At first, it looked like a movie, family outings to the theatre, ice skating on weekends, laughter in the park. In public, Eustachio even called Chantal's 2 daughters "my sweet girls." But the mask only lasted a few months. Work pressure mounted. He was clocking over 60 hours a week, sometimes sleeping at the hotel when he was too exhausted to drive home. By late 2004, he told his manager, "I'm quitting on December 31. I can't take it anymore." What he didn't say was that the thing he couldn't take was happening inside his own home. Behind closed doors, the growling began. The first slaps. The nights Chantal huddled with her daughters on the living room floor, too afraid to sleep in her own bed. The threatening messages whenever she dared to mention divorce. Work stress was only an excuse. The real madness had awakened, and it was counting down to the final days of 2004, the year Chantal Deschênes would never see the light again. Then came the fatal day, October 21st, 2004. At dawn, Eustachio and Chantal dragged themselves home after their night shift at the hotel. The 2 little girls were still fast asleep. The overnight babysitter, Joni Horn, overheard fragments of an argument as they walked through the door. At 7:15 a.m., Joni quietly left the house, the air inside already heavy as lead. At 8 a.m., the girls woke up to get ready for school. Before grabbing their backpacks, they ran into the bedroom to kiss their mother goodbye, as they always did. The door was half open. Chantal lay on the bed. Eustachio sat beside her. She forced a faint smile and whispered, "Be good at school, my loves." That was the last time those 2 children ever saw their mother alive. When the school doors closed behind them, the house fell into a deadly silence. And in that bedroom, jealousy turned into a hammer, and the knife in the kitchen drawer found its next target. 1:29 p.m., October 21st, 2004. Eustachio Gallese showed up at the door of his ex-wife, Joanne Lefrançois. His face was ghost white. His hands shook as he held out a thick plastic bag stuffed with cash, every dollar he had saved. He forced it into her hands and rasped, "Hold this for me. I just killed Chantal." Then he called 911 himself. His voice was terrifyingly calm. "I killed my wife. The address is 145 Rue. Please come now, and please go to the girls' school first. Don't let them go home and see their mother like this." Allstad, 39 p.m. Just 10 minutes later, police swarmed the scene. Eustachio stood motionless in the yard, hands raised, offering no resistance. He repeated the words like a memorized. I killed her with a hammer and a knife. At the same time, another unit forced entry into Chantal Deschênes' home. What they found in the bedroom made even veteran officers turn away. Chantal lay face down on the bed. Blood pooled beneath her, soaking into the mattress. Beside her were two blood-smeared knives and a hammer, its handle snapped clean in half from the sheer force of the blows. The autopsy confirmed the sequence. First, the hammer, at least 7 crushing strikes. Then while she was still barely alive, he switched to the knife, multiple fatal wounds to her chest, and the hammer didn't break from age. It broke because he used all the strength of a man possessed by jealousy, determined to make sure the woman who said, "I want to leave you," would never speak again. In 2006, a Quebec courtroom fell silent. The jury needed only a few hours to convict Eustachio Gallese of second-degree murder. He didn't deny it. She said she wanted to leave me, so I had to do it. Sentence: life in prison. No parole for at least 15 years, and his record was already soaked in violence. 1997 assaulted his first wife, Joanne Lefrancois, 7 days in jail. 2004 bludgeoned and stabbed his second wife, Chantal Deschênes, to death with a hammer and knife. Yet, in March 2019, after exactly 15 years behind bars, the Parole Board of Canada looked at that same file and released him under a so-called special supervision plan that still horrifies the nation, allowed to meet women under supervision. No official romantic relationships permitted, but authorized to visit a sexual massage parlor once a month to meet his sexual needs with a signed stamped approval from his parole officer. Curfew from 10:00 p.m. to 8:00 a.m. except for alcohol recovery meetings. In other words, the system officially gave a 2-time wife killer permission to relieve stress using money and women's bodies, as long as he didn't fall in love. June 2019. Just 3 months after walking out of prison, Eustachio Gallese had already twisted the rule of once a month into 3, 4, even 5 visits a week. The door of the erotic massage parlor in the Sainte-Foy district opened for him like it did for a special regular, and that's where he met Marylène Levesque, 22 years old, the brightest smile in the room. 51 and 22, a man freshly released for crushing his wife's skull with a hammer, a young woman fighting to earn every dollar to outrun her past. Marylène's family knew what she did. They didn't judge, only stayed silent. When people asked, she brushed it off with a casual smile. "It's just a job," then quickly changed the subject. But those closest to her noticed the shift. She grew quieter, more withdrawn. Sometimes her eyes went hollow when she thought no one was watching. She once texted a friend, "I want to quit. But if I quit, how do I live? 2 hours here equals 2 weeks at a factory." Marylène's past had never been easy. Her parents split when she was still an infant. Her childhood was a blur of suitcases back and forth between her mother's home and foster care. She learned how to survive long before she learned how to truly live. And this job, though she never said it out loud, was just another door in a long hallway of doors she'd been forced to walk through. As for Gallese, in Marylène, he saw something familiar, something he once saw in Chantal Deschênes, a young, beautiful woman he believed could be controlled with money. He began booking her privately, no longer through the studio. He paid extra to see her off the clock. He texted every day. He called her my baby. He said he just wanted to take care of her. Marylène smiled, took the money and kept her distance, but Gallese no longer understood distance. To him, money meant ownership for the 3rd time in his life. Summer 2019, Gabriel Truchen, Marylène's boyfriend, knew exactly what she did in Quebec City, more than 200 kilometers from their home. He didn't like it, but he didn't forbid it either. "It's just work," Marylène would always say, her voice light as air. Her friends said she wasn't proud, but she wasn't ashamed either. She spoke plainly without dodging, then laughed it off. It's just skin, she'd say. But Eustachio Gallese's supervision in the real world was virtually non-existent. At the massage parlor, he showed up like a VIP almost every day. At first, the staff smiled and tolerated him. Then they began to fear him. He grew jealous when Marylène spoke to other clients. He grabbed her arm so hard it left bruises. Once he slammed his fist on a table and threatened another girl simply because she refused his special request. The result, he was permanently banned from the studio. Not a single employee there knew the truth, that the man they had just kicked out had already killed his wife. Late summer 2019, the Parole board was formally notified. A new ruling came down. Gallese was strictly forbidden from entering any erotic massage parlor. One violation, and he would be sent straight back to prison. But Gallese was already obsessed with Marylène, and he had no intention of stopping. His solution was simple and chillingly direct. He texted her privately, "I'll pay you $1,300 Canadian. Meet me at a hotel, just the two of us." Marylène hesitated for a moment, then she agreed. She needed the money. And he was an old client, someone who had never crossed the line inside the studio. The first private meeting. Room 166 Hotel Chateau Laurier seemed normal. He paid exactly as promised. There was no violence. He even cried. He told her how desperately he missed his wife, how for 15 years, not a single day had passed without guilt eating him alive over losing her. Marylène smiled gently, patted his hand, assuming it was just lonely talk. She had no idea that the wife he claimed to miss so terribly was Chantal Deschênes, the woman he had beaten and stabbed to death with a hammer and a knife back in 2004, early 2020. Inside Eustachio Gallese's mind, the past began to replay like a broken tape. Marylène started replying to his messages more slowly. She declined 2 private meetings in a row. To him, this was no longer a client-worker relationship. This was the 3rd woman in his life who dared to leave him. He couldn't sleep. He bombarded her with messages, sweet one moment, threatening the next. Finally, he played his last card. $2,000 Canadian. So much money that Marylène couldn't say no. She texted Gabriel, "Just this once. Don't worry, it's an old client." Gabriel begged her, "Don't go to a hotel. It's dangerous." But $2,000 meant rent, tuition, a way out of this life. She agreed. January 22, 2020, 5:00 p.m. Hotel surveillance captured the last images of Marylène alive. She walked into the restaurant at Hotel Chateau Laurier, forcing a polite smile at the 51-year-old man waiting for her. 8:30 p.m. They went up to room 176. The door closed. The lights went out. 11:35 p.m. The doors of the Quebec police station swung open. Eustachio Gallese walked in his coat smeared with blood. His hands trembled as he spoke. "I just killed a girl at a hotel. Room 166. Police raced through the street sirens, screaming across Sainte-Foy, hoping they were still in time. But when the door was forced open, Marylène lay motionless in a pool of dark red blood. 57 stab wounds, the number read aloud by the medical examiner, made even the most seasoned officer turn away. He had stabbed her in a frenzy, as if every strike carried the same desperate message, "Don't leave me." Before turning himself in, he still had time to sit at a nearby bar for 2 full hours, draining his final drink, dumping the knife into a sewer, and tossing Marylène's phone into a trash can. Then he walked calmly into the police station, just like he had in 2004. All of Canada froze when they learned who the killer was, a man who had beaten and stabbed his wife to death with a hammer and a knife in 2004. A man released in 2019 with a document stamped risk of reoffending low. A man legally allowed to meet his sexual needs. Those 57 stab wounds did more than kill Marylène Levesque. They pierced the trust of an entire nation. This time, the blood didn't stop on the floor of room 166. It flowed all the way to the Canadian Parliament. Millions demanded answers, screaming one question in unison. How did a monster get a government-issued license to kill again? Summer 2020. Canada was still in shock. The 57 wounds on Marylène's body had become 57 formal accusations aimed straight at the criminal justice system. Parliament trembled. The media called it a stain that can never be erased. 2 federal investigations were launched immediately, one to review the entire risk assessment process, and another to rip open Eustachio Gallese's file from the very day he was released. The findings released at the end of 2020 were chilling. Supervision was nearly non-existent. His parole officer knew he was visiting massage parlors weekly and never reported it. The strategy, allowing him to access sexual services, was approved by 2 parole board members without consulting a domestic violence psychologist. No one checked whether he was carrying a weapon, and no one stopped to ask. How should society treat a man who once crushed his wife's skull with a hammer? The head of the Correctional Service of Canada stood before the cameras, his expression grave. This is a horrific tragedy. A tragedy that should never have happened. He promised that deep reforms would follow. And then, nothing truly happened. No one was fired. No one was prosecuted. Marylène's family received compensation from the government, an undisclosed amount tied to a silence agreement. They signed. They cried. They knew no amount of money could ever bring their daughter back. Ottawa, February 2020. Canada's Minister of Public Safety, Bill Blair, stood before the cameras, his voice breaking. Our deepest condolences. Marylène Levesque's death was entirely preventable. In Quebec, Justice Minister Sonia Lebel nearly shouted into the microphone. How does a man who once murdered his wife with a hammer get released back onto the streets? Who signed that paper? Who let him hunt for his next victim? The questions hung in the air. No one answered. Behind closed doors, Marylène's family quietly signed the settlement. A secret number, a single line in small print, no legal action, and a door that slammed shut forever. Online anonymous voices kept typing. Well, she worked in that line of work, so as if 57 stab wounds were somehow the victim's fault. Not the monsters, and not the system that set him free. February 27, 2020, Quebec courtroom. At first, he was charged with second-degree murder. Then police found the receipt for the knife purchased the day before. They found the hotel booking messages sent a full week earlier. The truth was undeniable. This was first-degree murder planned, prepared, deliberate. The judge delivered the sentence in a voice of ice. Life in prison, no possibility of parole for 25 years. Meaning the earliest he could walk free again would be age 76 if he even lived that long. But the real question still echoed through that courtroom and through the minds of millions of Canadians. When he turned 76, who will be the one to sign his release papers for the 3rd time? Marylène Levesque is gone forever, but her 57 stab wounds remain. Embedded in the system, cutting through empty promises, and driving straight into the conscience of a nation that once prided itself on being one of the safest places in the world for women.